about these motherfuckers.
It's time to go. All I want to do is fucking eat.
We're not practicing to beat somebody. We're practicing to beat everybody.
Nowhere to run and nowhere to hide for 4 quarters. They got to see us in our house for 4 quarters. They got to look us in the eye for 4. This is about us and our family and our house. This is about us. This is our mentality. We ain't backing down. We ain't running. Set a tone, send a message. This is our house. Physical toughness wins in football now. And if you in this room, you got it. If you come in here, you better believe in it. Because this physical toughness, it's what makes the difference. Elite focus. That's all I'm doing to the guy across from me. I'm fixing to whip his ass. Not in my box, not today. It's about us. It's about our family. We attack. You take that helmet and you strike them. And you strike them and you strike them. That's how you get respect.
Now I am gonna take shit out of them. Physically, I want to break them.
Oh, everybody. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. The island of knowledge and the shoreline of ignorance. We're 3 games into the season. Our Bulldogs are 3-0, 1-0 in SEC play after cracking open the conference slate against those South Carolina Gamecocks this past weekend in Athens. If we had known a few key pieces of information before the 2023 season kicked off, how much differently would Georgia fans be viewing what we've seen through the first 3 games of this year? I think that's a very interesting question. And that's exactly why I posed the concept of the island of knowledge and the shoreline of ignorance a couple of weeks ago. We've learned a few things about this team. We learned a lot on Saturday. We've learned that they're not fully healthy, but we also learned that they're a tough group. They're resilient. They're not going to quit. They're not going to point fingers at each other when times are difficult. So I feel good about that. We've learned that there's absolutely room for improvement, especially in the red zone on offense and on defense. We've learned a lot. But when you start talking about what you've learned and what you know, and you juxtapose that against what you thought you knew before the season started, that's where the angst comes from. That's where the uneasy feelings come from. I had a little fun with that over the weekend. I posted some stuff across social media. Maybe you saw it, about how fans were reacting to not being up 21-0 after the first quarter. Having a little fun. But we all felt a little nervous. We all do. It's just, that's part of the game. We're not playing. We're not in control, right? It's up to the guys on the field to get the job done. And that makes us anxious because we thought we knew something about this squad. But what we've learned is that players matter. We've learned that execution matters. And it's the little things that can make a big difference. That expectations thing, we can talk about that a little bit more here in a few minutes. But something I feel like I need to say, especially in this world of short form content and TikTok and Twitter and all these places. And it doesn't, I don't mean any disrespect by it, but I think it's a useful reminder that these games are not played on Xbox. These players are not, you can't slide the talent skill level all the way up to 99 and go out there and dominate your way through a season and build your dynasty and do all those things that you can do on those games. That's not how it works. That's not how football works. The way football works is you take the players you have, you try to put them in the best position you can to succeed, you coach them up, and they get better every day, hopefully. I mean, that's the mantra of this Georgia Bulldogs team, is that they want to get 1% better every day. Coach Smart said they want to become elite at improving every day. I think that when you look over the first 3 games and you put that perspective on it, there's not a whole lot that you can be too upset about. Again, I'm not carrying water for anybody. there's room for improvement across the board. But having said that, that doesn't mean that I don't give them credit for what they have done, for the ways they have improved through 3 games. The bottom line is, again, based on what we thought we knew heading into the season, this team, certainly not the same as the last 2 teams. Maybe they're not quite as good. That doesn't mean that they still can't be conference champions. Hell, it doesn't mean they can't be national champions. It just means that after 3 games, they're still learning themselves. They're still learning about themselves. They're figuring out each other. They're figuring out the game plan. Like, I listened to some of the sound bites this week, and there are some people who are playing key moments for the Georgia defense that when they were in high school, there was no game plan. It was see ball, get ball. They did nothing as far as schematically speaking, like this is your responsibility. None of that. They just took their players and told them to go get the football. When you come from a background like that, and then you come into a place like the University of Georgia, where everything is structured and every movement you make matters inside the scheme because they play a complementary team game, well, you can see that it's going to take a minute to get up to speed on how to do that. And even when you think you've got it, when you're out there in game action, it's never going to look the way you practiced it exactly, and you have to adjust on the fly. Those are real-world growing pains on the football field. People don't have patience for that anymore. But that's what's happening. It's happening along the offensive line as well. We know that that was a veteran group coming into the year. We also know that there were young people who were being counted on to play major roles along that offensive line at key positions. And that brings us to the injuries. If none of that stuff had happened, if we were chalk from last year and the entire team returned, but then maybe these dogs aren't quite as fortunate in the injury department as the last 2 seasons, you're going to see that play out on the field. It's going to look different. Now, with all that said, I'll say it again. I'm not making excuses for anybody. You have a job, do your job. You're drilling it at practice. Do the best you can. But just a word to the wise, man. Remember, this is real world football. So, it's not always going to look exactly like we want it to look. Now, on the opposite side of that coin, I do think, and it was showcased brilliantly this week against South Carolina, that at the end of the day, it comes down to players and not plays. It comes down to execution of the game plan. The smallest things can make the greatest difference. All you have to do is look at the first half versus South Carolina against the second half. The first half, missed tackles, blown coverages, missed assignments, led to 14 points for the Gamecocks. That and a pretty good quarterback. Let's give credit where credit's due. The first half, we saw Georgia drive down the field, using up large amounts of the quarter on offense. And then they bogged themselves down and didn't pay it off with penalties, missed assignments, and unforced errors in the special teams game with the missed field goals. They wound up with 3 points at the half. But as we saw, as we've heard, and now as we have seen on the SEC Inside Edition this week, which was focused on Georgia against South Carolina, we know what happened in that locker room at halftime. Steady as you go. Trust your training. Believe in the plan and the process. Do your job. And when they went back out there in the third quarter, we saw a different team. Now, be honest with yourself. Do you really think that the defensive or offensive playbook are any different in the second half than they were in the first? I do not. I know it's not. You can see that they ran the same plays. One of the things I did expect to see more of in the first half this last week against South Carolina was a little bit more pressure. Created pressure on the defensive side of the ball. I thought they might try to light Rattler up a little bit earlier, a little bit more often, not let him get in his rhythm. But again, to his credit, he made a couple of good reads, got the ball out of his hands quickly. South Carolina did what they did. But in the second half, they turned the dial up a little bit. Maybe were a little bit more effective on their pitches. As Coach Smart likes to say, you can't do the same thing all the time. You got to have 3 pitches, right? Fastball, changeup, curve. So they're pitching, Schumann's pitching. Maybe they get a little bit of feel for what's happening. Win a few more of those individual battles. Get that South Carolina offense off rhythm, and then you start to see things roll on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, we saw some things that were different there too. And I'm going to touch on this a little bit more later. But we saw, especially after Mims left the game, better offensive line play. Now, I'm not saying that's Mims' fault. I'm saying that when he was in the game, the middle of the line was a little leaky. There were some missed assignments in there. Free runners into the backfield. That tightened up after Mims went out of the game. Fairchild came in at guard. And then in the second half, we saw Truss do what he does out on that edge. They started to move people. The run game opened up. By the way, round of applause, right, for Dejon Edwards. Wonderful performance. Greatly needed. And proof that it's the players, not the plays, that make the difference. Because a good back is going to make an offensive line look good. And we saw that repeatedly from Edwards this past Saturday. So in the second half, the run game starts to work a little bit better. The offense turns itself a little bit more towards true play action. And then what do we see? Ra Thomas down the field. Brock Bowers down the field. Because now that play action has those backers creeping in, those safeties taking a wrong step. And the offense performed better. Execution. Players over plays. That's what it comes down to. Now, since we're into conference play, Kirby had said earlier in the year that we wouldn't know how the new clock rules were actually affecting things until we got into conference play. And he said this week that when it comes down to numbers of plays, there were actually only about 6 fewer plays than there were last year in the third game, which breaks out to about 3 plays per team. So there's not that much difference. But you and I both know that when we watch the game, it feels like there are fewer possessions. Now, they haven't measured possessions, but you would think that if plays were not drastically different, then possessions wouldn't be drastically different. But that's something that should be studied if you really want to know the answer, and it hasn't been yet. But you and I know, we watched the game, it felt like we didn't have many opportunities. And then when you squander them with missed kicks, that really, really deflates the stadium and the team. It really makes you feel bad. And if you follow the statistics about special teams play, then you know how important it is. When you make a big play on special teams, kick return, block a kick, that goes a long way in determining whether or not you're going to win that game. When you miss a kick, it does just the opposite. It tilts the board not in your favor. You're more apt to lose that game. When you miss 2, and then you're still able to overcome it, that says a lot about the resiliency of this team, but it also says that they have to work that out. You cannot waste possessions like that as we move through the year. So those clock rules, whether directly or indirectly, because we don't have the data to back it up, feel like they've put a premium on every possession and, more importantly, every defensive stop. which is what we saw in the second half from Georgia. 3 and out. Get the ball back to your offense. Right back down the field and score. Those things matter. So it's just something to keep an eye on as we move forward. I was very proud of the team with the way they responded, the way they answered the bell in the third quarter. How can you not be? How can you not be after we saw them shoot themselves in the foot in the first half? Penalties inside the red zone. Things like that. Killing drives, missed field goals. They cleaned that up. They answered the bell, put the points on the board, and then it felt more like what we're used to. But when you overcome a 14-3 halftime deficit, you overcome the loss of a starting offensive tackle, probably one of the best, top 5 players on your team, and 2 field goals, that's quite the hill you've built for yourself. And then at the end of the day, you're still able to celebrate a double-digit victory, learn from it, and get better. So it was a great day for Georgia. It may not have been a whole lot of fun to watch if you're one that's easy to panic, but it was a great day. There's a lot to teach from that tape. So that's a good thing for the Dogs moving forward. More specifically, there were a few things. I mentioned that there's area for improvement, and that's absolutely right. It's across the board. Offensive line, quarterback, all the positions. One of the things I would like to see, and I mentioned this a second ago about Bowers, is most of his targets so far, and he's being targeted. They are trying to get him the football, but what they've done so far is thrown it to him or given it to him inside a box of, say, 3 to 4 yards around the line of scrimmage. I believe that as we see this run game heal, improve, and the offensive line starts to get, a better feel for the backs that they're working with, we're going to see an increase in those true play actions. And when we do that, that's going to push Bowers, Rosemary-Jack-Saint, Ra Thomas, C.J. Smith down the field. And we're going to see these longer throws. I think that's coming. But I do think that we're having to work towards it. Again, you can't just snap your fingers and make it happen. That's based on personnel, a lot of moving parts. But I think that's where we're headed. So I'm going to be watching out for that. That true play action, then down the field. I think one of the other things I really want to see is Carson Beck. Now, Carson has been accurate. He has taken care of the football. And he has run the offense the way they want it run. If you believe what the coaches tell us, then he's making the correct reads. Which brings me to my point, or something that I've noticed, is he seems to have a quick clock. His footwork seems quick. His ball fakes seem quick or half-hearted. I would love to see Carson slow down by a half a beat, slow his drop, follow through on his ball fakes just a little bit more, make them more convincing. That's going to slow down the timing of the overall play, give those routes a chance to develop a little bit further down the field. That way, when he begins to make his reads, he will actually see a picture that looks like he can throw the ball into that window. We've seen him be accurate. I have no doubt he can do that. I just think he's a little out of sync. Now, why is he out of sync? I heard someone the other day say possibly because of who he practices against every day. Your reads have to be quicker if you're trying to hit that window against the Georgia defense in practice. But what he has to get is that feel, that natural feel that it's different in the game. You're not playing your defense. So let it breathe. Then make your read, then make your throw. It's about letting the route tree develop. It's not about his throwing motion. It's not about any of that. He's a former baseball player. He has an extremely quick release. If we're talking in terms of a Dan Marino release, right? from cocked to gone, that's lightning quick. I'm talking about letting the play breathe, letting it develop. So that's something I would like to see. Just an observation. I want to see him climb in the pocket as he did on the deep ball to Rah-Rah. Pressure comes, he steps right up into the pocket, makes a good throw, puts the ball right on 5, 36 yards, and they're off and running. First half, he didn't do that. He had the same sort of pocket situation, or better, and yet we saw him kind of skip sideways, sort of falling backwards, try to make a throw. His footwork and his mechanics, straighten those out, climb in the pocket, because your best pass protectors are those 3 dudes in the middle. Climb that pocket, deliver the ball down the field. So I want to see that. Not concerned about his accuracy. I just want him to slow his internal clock just a little bit because he's being protected. These statistics bear that out. Trust it. Just like they trusted moving into the second half last week, I want to see Beck trust his pocket, step up in there, get the ball down the field. I think I want to take this opportunity also to point out that over the first 3 games, there has been a lot of improvement and a lot of work and improvement done on the perimeter blocking game. Rah-Rah Thomas, Arian Smith, those dudes out there on the edge. We know Rosemary Jack Saint's a good blocker. They have put in a lot of work, and they've come a long way in just 3 weeks, and that was evident against South Carolina. The play that sprung Lovett down inside the 5-yard line, beautifully blocked. Beautifully blocked. I just wanted to take an opportunity. Say, I think those dudes are working really hard out there. I think it's showing, and I believe that we're going to continue to see them improve. And as we do, that's what's going to lead to the offense being more explosive in the run game. I've already laid out how I think they're going to be more explosive in the pass game moving forward. I do believe it's coming. I think in the run game, obviously you have to have healthy backs. We have to have playmakers back there, guys that can make it happen, and we do. There are guys, even with the injuries the way they are, who are still capable of making dynamic plays. Dejan Edwards, Dylan Bell, Cash Jones, Kendall, if he ever gets healthy, he can have that explosiveness too. But then you have to have that blocking at the second level, which means that our offensive linemen are going to have to follow through on their blocks on the second level. Those dudes out on the edge are going to have to do that perimeter blocking. That's how you take a 15-yard run and turn it into a 30, 40, 50-yard run. So that has to continue to come. But it's not the kind of thing that's just going to happen, especially not for a guy like Rah-Rah Thomas, a guy like Dominic Lovett. They just weren't asked to do that. But we can see that they're trying, and we can see that they're coming, and that's a good thing. So that's a little bit of thought, about what we saw against South Carolina, where we're headed moving forward. We all know what's in front of us. UAB's on the docket this week. Admittedly, that's not a team that's going to strike a lot of fear into a lot of people. Trent Dilfer said as much. He said, Georgia, they play complementary football. I'm going to use Georgia as the example of how to play good team football moving forward. So these things and much, much more that we're not getting into here are the kind of things that the Dogs need to work on with live reps this week against UAB. Hopefully we can stay healthy, get some guys back maybe. Blasky looks like he might be back along the offensive line, which should help. So that's good. So there's a lot to look forward to as we head into, the middle part of the season here before we go for our first road trip to take on those Auburn Tigers, which has now been set as a 3:30 kick on the Plains at Jordan-Hare. I've said my piece about how things shook out for the Dogs against South Carolina. But, of course, I'm not going to say it as well as the man himself can say it.
I mentioned that at halftime to him. I used that as a reference of we've been here before, we've done this before. We are resilient, and we have a. Shane said it after the game. He said, you showed why you have a championship caliber football team, because teams that are championship caliber, they find a way when they don't have their best game. We got to figure out why didn't we have our best games? I certainly felt like we had great practices, and I felt like we improved. I'll be honest, I thought we played so much better offensively. We didn't get rewarded for for playing better because of A, kicks, and B, not cashing in the red area.
I mean, that's just what we were talking about. Execution, especially down in that red area, because everything shrinks. Everything becomes more important. When you get down there, the execution really does make all the difference in the world. So, I mean, for example, the play that South Carolina scored on, Juice Wells, as a result of at least 3 missed Georgia Bulldog tackles and more bad angles to the football, that's the exact same play that the Dogs ran in the first half when they got down in the red zone. They didn't execute it, though. South Carolina did a better job. That's why they got what they earned, right? Because in the game of football, that's what it is. You get what you earn. You are what your record says you are. Those expectations are a dangerous thing. Back-to-back national champions, everybody feels great. Year after year, top 5 recruiting classes, fantastic. Still got to go play. These young men still have to grow up. They still have to learn the game on the field. Like I said, it's not Xbox, and it's not those players' fault that they're not winning 51 to -10 the way fans want them to. Right? They're doing the best they can. They don't care about our expectations, nor should they. But we create that anxiety for ourselves. I mean, how many of you have paused for just half a second and looked up and said, man, this is game 4. The college football season that we've waited so long for is already almost a quarter of the way over. Have you enjoyed it? Have you actually allowed yourself to enjoy the college football season so far? Or did you do yourself the disservice of discounting what your team has done because, in your opinion, they've played someone that isn't as good or that Georgia should beat? Does that take away from your enjoyment of the game? I think for a lot of people it does. Oh, they should have won. They should have killed them. They didn't beat them bad enough. I mean, you feel however you want to feel. But I'm trying my best to not do that. I want to enjoy the game, every play of every game. I think that's what it's about. That's why we clamor for the game so much. We want to enjoy it. So don't do yourself the disservice of discounting the victories, of discounting the good efforts, the great plays, things like that. These weekends are going to be gone sooner than later. We're all going to be like, where's college football? And all you're going to hear is people bellyaching about the fact that the Dogs aren't playing. Yet, there are some that when they're playing can't be bothered to watch because the game is against an inferior opponent. Just enjoy the games, man. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to do my best to do the same. On those expectations, Kirby had a little bit more to say.
My expectation is we go out and dominate and create a nightmare and make people never want to play you again. We didn't do that today. We didn't make them never want to play us again. But we did respond to adversity, and that's all it is. I mean, it's going to happen all over the country, guys. Go look. It's going to happen all over the country. People have to play close games to get better. And the expectation that's created for these teams that are the top-tier teams, it wasn't created by them. It's created by perception. You are what you do on the field. And we are, right now, a team that has played 3 average first halves. I don't know if they're even average, but they have responded.
And that response is really all that we can ask them to do, is to work hard, try to get better, and try to improve on what they did the last time out, right? 1% better every day. The teams that are going to be competing for championships at the end of the season are the teams that manage to improve throughout the year. I am long on record as saying one of the things that has made Georgia different in that regard is that they have recruited to such a level that they have depth so that when you get down into November, they can still have Bloody Tuesdays. They can still go team run, be physical, practice tackling, those sorts of things. So injuries play a part. I mean, I believe in next man up as much as the next person. At some point, though, you simply aren't as good as you were. Now, I'm not saying that's where we are. I'm just saying that if the Dogs want to be competitive, competing for championships at the end of the year, they are going to have to continue to get better. And it's like Kirby said this week in his press conference, they are going to practice the way they practice. You cannot take it easy and not practice if you want to have a quality football team. So injuries are what they are, and they're going to do the best they can to navigate that when they crop up. Now, like I said, this week I had some fun on social media. You may have seen this if you follow me over on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram. I hope you follow me in all those places. But if you were there, you may have seen Georgia fans' reaction when they're up 21-0, or not up 21-0 after the first quarter, begging for some help. Little panic. I love that. Apparently other people did too. Some good news this week. On3 said that Georgia commit Nathaniel Frazier was reevaluated and has now been bumped up to a 5-star at the running back position. So regardless of what we're talking about as depth this year, just know reinforcements are on the way. We've got bodies coming in there, young, talented men who are going to do big things between the hedges. As I mentioned, Georgia-Auburn, kickoff time is set for 3:30 on CBS in a couple of weeks. Well, not quite 2 weeks. But this brings us back to this injury list. This was the injury list coming out of the South Carolina game. If you haven't seen it, take a second and just peruse what you're looking at there. Look at some of those names. The top 4, definitely. 5 of the top 6. 6 of the top 8 are prime contributors for this football team. And they have not been 100%. Or they have not been available. That changes your football team. Whether we want to admit it or not, whether we want to let that hurt our feelings. Because we do believe in the next man up thing so much. I know I do. You will never hear me make an excuse over injuries. But there is a reality that are tied to it. At some point, they take a toll. So here's hoping we can get better pretty quick because we've got some big games coming up. Our man SVP picked up an award this week, Offensive Lineman of the Week, as named by the SEC, which was a really good thing. My university, my alma mater, was recognized as being a top 20 university, public university this week, which makes me happy. And here's a broadcast note. In case you haven't checked it out, be sure to join us tomorrow night, 7 p.m. My brother Joe and I come on here. We pick all the SEC games, live stream for an hour. That is the most interactive YouTube Georgia Bulldogs SEC live stream on the internet. At least that's what we're working for. But the only way we can do that is if you people join us. We have a good time. You never know what's going to happen over there. Come and hang out with us for an hour tomorrow night. We're going to have a good time. Here's Coach telling us about those injuries. Again, if you don't follow me on these other platforms, be sure that you get on over there and check it out because there's a lot of good stuff over there. And here's something that actually makes a point about this offensive production this season. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a minute so you can watch it roll through a couple of times and just pay attention to the points and the yards per game that this offense has put up over the last 4 seasons, and then look at the last number, where we are right now after 3 games. It's essentially the same. The plays are the same. The difference is the execution and the players that we have available currently to try to run this offense. But the system is in place. So don't worry too much. Have faith. Trust the process. We're baking the cake, as Nick Saban likes to say. I think we're going to be all right on the end. Now, I also like to do this little thing early in the week and ask you guys to drop in your score predictions for the upcoming game. This week we have UAB So feel free to drop your predictions here in the comments, or head on over to the Facebook page or the YouTube channel and hit the community tab. You can leave your predictions there and we can check them out. Since we're here on YouTube, I can use this as an opportunity to let you know that, guys, I do this for fun. This is my second thing. Well, actually, it's more like my third or fourth thing, right? I'm a family man first. You saw my little girl in here earlier. They take all my time. They get every minute they want. When I'm not with them, I have to work a normal job like, most people. Now I do this because I want to. But if you want to support what we're doing, if you want to help me, one of the easiest ways you can do that is to head over to the community page here on YouTube, and you'll see, or at the top of my front page there, you'll see a button that says join. Go ahead and join, become a member of the channel. You can do it for as little as $1. That's a wonderful way to support what we're doing here. Help me keep the lights on, help us keep this thing rolling, because the more resources I have, the more content I can produce for you. We have to know it's worth it. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself. So thank you all again for being here. I appreciate it very much. So that's what was going on the last week. One of the other things I wanted to point out to you while we're here is the YouTube page. You can see it right here. You're watching us live on YouTube tonight. Again, I appreciate you being here. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for notifications, because I don't want you to miss out on all the fun we're having, all the live streams, all the new videos we drop, things like that. I want to make sure you're hearing part of it, because we are having a good time, and I appreciate you. And another way that you can support what we're doing here, takes no time at all, is head on over to the Field House. Check out some of these designs we have, some of the new designs we have over at the Field House. There's a lot going on over here. Sweatshirts, cooler weather's coming. Got the crown, the double crown. You got the champ up here at the top. I have this shirt on top here. I have it in red. It's beautiful. You may have seen it. I can't remember if I've worn it on here or not. But if you're interested in anything like that and you want to support us, that's another very, very easy way to do that. And I appreciate you if you're even thinking about it. If you don't do anything else, thanks for liking the video, share the video, tell the other members of Dog Nation about us, because we're over here having a good time. And with that, I think we've just about covered everything, because the thing I think we all just have to remember is to be patient. This is a new team. No team is the same. This year's team is not last year's team. Last year's team has nothing to do with this year's team. We have to make sure that we take these guys and their effort for what it's worth. As hard as any of us might be on them, as hard as the internet might be on anybody that's involved with the football program, I believe that we're still not as hard on them as they are on themselves. They know what the standard is. They know what they're trying to achieve. So I'm just asking for myself and for everybody else, let's just have a little patience. Watch it develop. Because I think that when you look at it that way, by the time we get down to the end of the year, if this season goes the way that we think it will go, we're going to be able to look back and say, that was the moment. That was the game. I saw where this happened. Right? And then we're going to just take that much more pride in our university and our team, because we will have seen the growth. It's not just some video game score that doesn't matter. We are invested at this point. And that's going to make whatever successes lie ahead even that much sweeter. That's the kind of football season I want to enjoy. So I'm just going to put that out there for something for you to think about. Maybe you want to do it that way too. So with that, until next time, go Dogs.
Told him, how about them fucking dogs? That's what I told him.